We begin with the very first verse of the surah, which is Alif Lam Mim Ra. Uh, these are disjointed letters. They are not read together to form a word. Uh, however, I've been emphasizing it over and over again that they do have meanings. The only thing is that they need to be investigated. Uh, but there is definitely another message that these letters are putting across, which is that if there are surahs that have the same disjointed letters, uh, they have something in common. Their themes are similar. So, interestingly, Surah Yusuf and Surah Rad are partners. However, Surah Yusuf began with Alif Lam Ra, and Surah Rad has begun with Alif Lam Mim Ra. Alif Lam Ra is common to both. However, there is an additional meme in Surah Rad, and it seems to me that probably this surah, on the one hand, has themes common with Surah Yusuf, as also with all those surahs that begin with Alif Lam Mim. Now, this is a very interesting, inviting area of investigation, which I'm sure serious students of the Quran must focus on to be able to get deeper and clearer understanding of the Quran. The first verse says, Alif Lam Mim Ra, and I always translate it as, this is Surah Alif Lam Mim Ra, Tilka Ayatul Kitab. These are the verses of the book, the awaited book, the book of the Almighty. Wallazi unzila ilayka mir rabbika al-haq. And whatever has been revealed to you from your Lord is true, is the truth. What it means is that the Almighty is mentioning this fact himself. The way he has presented, anybody who wants to understand would know that it's the true message of the Almighty. And when you read it, understand it, and if you get this confidence that it is the truth, then it will have an impact on you and the way you understand it. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. However, most people do not believe. That is, the people who were presented with this message when it was being revealed, most of them were not believing. Then we move on to verse 5. It has to be a selection, you can't read each verse. It says, وَإِن تَعْجَبْ عَجَبٌ قَوْلُهُمْ. And if you are amazed, then what really is amazing is the fact, surprising is the fact that they say, أَإِذَا كُنَّا تُرَابًا أَإِنَّا لَفِي خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. Is it that when we are going to be reduced to dust, are we going to be created once again? So the disbelievers used to wonder what's going on. They used to criticize, ridicule, and ask, is it really true? True. So the Almighty is saying that if you were to be surprised by anything, the surprising thing is that these people are raising this question. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. These are the people who actually deny their Lord, they reject their Lord. That is, the one who created them, they are denying the possibility that he can recreate them. They are rejecting the possibility that he will hold people accountable for their deeds. وَأُولَٰئِكَ الْأَغْلَالُ فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ. And they are the ones who are going to have shackles upon their necks. وَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. And they are the ones who are the deserving inhabitants of the fire. هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. They are going to live therein forever. We move on to now verse 17, where the Almighty is describing, as I said in the beginning, the outcome of this confrontation that was there between the believers and the disbelievers, and there was a struggle going on. The Almighty is mentioning that this struggle is going to culminate in the believers succeeding, and those who are rejecting the message, they're going to be eliminated. They will perish. And God has given the example of a natural phenomenon which was observed by people. They quite commonly knew what it was. Verse 17 says, Anzala minas samai man. He sends down from the sky water, rain. Fasalat awdiyatuhum biqadariha. And valleys flow according to their capacity. Fahtamala sailu zabanan rabia. And the waves, the torrent, it carries rising foam. There's foam that you find appearing on the surface of water, particularly when there are floods. وَمِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ ابْتِغَاءَ حِلْيَةٍ أَوْ مَتَاعٍ زَبَدٌ مِثْلُهُ. And likewise, that which they heat in fire, desiring their jewelry and utensils to be cleansed, there again there is foam, like the other foam. So when you see foam on the surface of water, it's visible, it seems to be prominent. However, كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْحَقَّ وَالْبَاطِلَ. That is how the Almighty gives the example of the truth and the untruth. فَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَانٍ. As for the foam, it vanishes, just disappears. وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ. But what is there to benefit humans? فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. It stays on the surface of earth. So the idea is that what is useful stays, and what is meant only for a temporary reason, which has no purpose, it appears, and it appears very prominent to begin with, but then it disappears in no time. So it has no life. كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ. That is how God presents examples. This example is the example of the natural phenomenon. لِلَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمُ الْحُسْنَى. Those who respond to the message of their Lord, they will have a good reward. وَالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُ. And those who do not accept the message, لَوْ أَنَّ لَهُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا وَمِثْلَهُ مَعَهُ لَافْتَدَوْا بِهِ. Even if they will have whatever is there on the earth, all wealth and treasures, they will spend to get themselves rescued, but they are not going to be rescued. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ سُوءُ الْحِسَابِ. They will have an accountability and a result which is going to be evil, bad for them. وَمَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ. And their refuge is going to be hell. وَبِئْسَ الْمِهَادِ. And it's an evil, it's a wretched place to go. Then the Almighty mentions in verse 23 the blessings of the paradise. And amongst the blessings that the Almighty mentions, there is this account which says, Jannatu adni yadkhulunaha. They're going to enter the paradise of eternity. وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَأَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ. And not only them, but those who will be eligible to enter amongst their elders, forefathers, their partners, their children. They'll also enter with them. وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ يَدْخُلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ. And angels will enter upon them from every gate. This is one of the most amazing promises that the Almighty has made to people who will enter the paradise. They have been informed that, the relatives that they have here and they lose them, they're going to come together and they'll live forever as families, which is honestly a news we need to rejoice, to understand. When we understand it, and should share with others, because this life, it really is gloomy when you look at the prospects of losing the people who are close to you. We stay together for a while, we have good relations, but then people pass away, and the end result is that you find that it really is something which is temporary as far as relations are concerned. The Almighty promises that if you perform well in this life, in the domain of faith and good deeds, and your close ones too, then you will come together in the paradise to live there forever. The Quran goes on to mention in verse 27, that 28, that the message of the Almighty, if you understand it and you remember Him, it is the only thing, the only source that can give you contentment and satisfaction. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Those who believe and whose hearts are content with remembrance of God. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Be absolutely sure that it's through remembering God that hearts get contentment. Why? Because, you are dissatisfied. You've got discontentment in your heart because things are not working out, in a way that you feel fully satisfied. There are problems in this life. The way this life moves on, there are difficulties in understanding, in adjusting to the difficulties, to the challenges, to the tragedies. So, when you understand the Almighty scheme completely, uh, you, as a consequence of it, you get this satisfaction that now you understand everything and there is contentment in your heart. And it's only through God's message that you can get it. Finally, in this surah, in verse 41, what we find is that the Almighty is mentioning that these people of Quraysh should realize that despite their opposition, the land is getting narrowed down for them. The message of Islam is spreading across, and their days are numbered, their days of dominance. The Quran says, "Avalam yarau anna na'til arda nanqusuha min atrafiha." Have they not seen that we have narrowed the land, reducing it from its borders? That is, more and more people are embracing Islam, and therefore the rule of Quraysh and their dominance is getting challenged. So don't they realize, is it not about time that they should believe and accept the truth? After Surah Ra'd, we have this pair of Surah Ibrahim and Al-Hijr. These two surahs, like has been the scheme in the Quran all along, are also a pair. I mentioned earlier that the Quran has, amongst its 114 surahs, 108 surahs, they form 54 pairs. So it is in itself a very fascinating area of investigation that when you read two surahs together, you find commonalities in them. And when you do it yourself, you discover those commonalities, you get a sense of achievement. You get involved in understanding the surahs. I mean, I give you as a task, although it's a difficult task, read Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran, and you will be lost. The kind of commonalities that there are there, a very large in number. And yet, the two surahs are different from each other. They have their own themes, but they have common themes as well. Likewise, in Ibrahim and Al-Hijr, both surahs are actually talking about the fact that now that the message has been put across most effectively, the ultimate result that the message is promising or threatening is around the corner. However, the difference is that in one surah, Surah Ibrahim, the focus is on convincing people in a way that there remains no excuse left for them. And in Surah Al-Hijr, what we find is that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are being given comfort. They are being given the confidence that, your success is destined. The Almighty is going to make sure that this message it dominates. Surah Ibrahim begins with Alif Lam Ra, and likewise does Surah Al-Hijr. So we start Surah Al-Ibrahim. It says Alif Lam Ra. As I said, I would translate it as, this is Surah Alif Lam Ra. Kitabun anzalnahu ilayk. This is a book that we have revealed to you, O Prophet. لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. so that you take out humankind from the darknesses of ignorance to the light of truth. بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ, by the permission will of their Lord, إِلَى صِرَاطِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ, towards the path of the one who is exalted, dominating, and praiseworthy. Then we move on to verse 7 of the surah, wherein the Almighty is mentioning a very important principle for all of us to keep note of. He says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ, and remember when your Lord proclaimed, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ, if you're going to be grateful, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, I will most certainly increase you in favor. وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ, however, if you are going to be ungrateful, in azabi lashadid, be absolutely sure that my punishment is severe. Verse 18 mentions that it was the message of the Almighty that was delivered to the people who rejected it. When you reject the Almighty's message, then your deeds are destroyed, they get wasted. Deeds means good deeds. All humans do good deeds. You cannot afford to live a life without good deeds. However, there are some whose good deeds are valued, preserved. There are others whose good deeds get destroyed. So those who are disbelievers, their good deeds get destroyed. So the Quran says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ أَعْمَالُهُم. The example of those who disbelieve in their Lord is that their deeds, كَرَمَادٍ اشْتَدَّتْ بِهِ الرِّيحُ, are like ashes which the wind blows, فِي يَوْمٍ عَاصِفٍ, blows away forcefully in a day, in a stormy day. لَا يَقْدِرُونَ مِمَّا كَسَبُوا, they will have no control over what they used to do. It will have no positive implication for them. ذَلِكَ هُوَ الضَّلَالُ الْبَعِيدُ, and this is an extreme error, extreme blunder, deviation. You see, unfortunately, because of not understanding verses like these, many Muslims have this opinion that whereas we Muslims, all our good deeds are going to be accepted by the Almighty, alhamdulillah, and these non-Muslims, their deeds are going to be destroyed. The Quran is actually mentioning something not exactly the same. The Quran is saying that those who disbelieve, their deeds are going to be destroyed. What it means is that if somebody is presented with a truth from the Almighty, it becomes clear, and the person, knowing that it's true, rejects it arrogantly, his good deeds are actually valueless. Because, if you do good deeds genuinely, it impacts your personality. That is one theme which you will find mentioned in the Quran over and over again, a theme which has quite often been ignored. If you are a genuinely good person, it is bound to impact your complete entire personality. It is not possible that if you are presented with a true message which is making sense and is convincing from the Almighty, that you would reject it. So, if there is somebody who has a shallow personality, is doing good deeds, well, because some good deeds are to be done, you can't live without them, but is doing deeds, acts which are really evil, and does it persistently, then those good deeds will count to nothing. It's not just rejecting the message of the Almighty. If somebody murders another person and doesn't repent, somebody deprives another person of his wealth, of his land, for no justification, no matter whether he says his prayers, fasts, does Umrah, does Hajj, nothing would count. That's the principle that the Almighty has mentioned. And this particular verse is actually in accordance with that principle. Obviously, if a message from the Almighty comes to you, to a certain person, and he says from inside talking to himself, I know it's true, but why should I accept it? I don't. So, this is arrogance. So, arrogance is what causes your deeds to be destroyed, and this is one example of arrogance. Okay, let's move on. Uh, on the day of judgment, the Almighty mentions in verse 22, there is going to be exchange of statements between people who followed shaitan, Satan, and Satan. The Quran says, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ. And Satan will say when matters will be concluded, decisions would be taken about people. He would say, Inna Allah wa'adakum wa'adal haq. Look, God promised you a promise that was true. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ. And I also promised you something. فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. And I betrayed you. I went against my promise. Shaitan promises you success of this life, brilliant results if you do certain evil things. So he said, I promised you, and I did not fulfill my promise. I betrayed. However, وَمَا كَانَ لِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. I did not have any authority over you, except إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ, that I invited you, فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي, and you accepted my invitation. That is exactly what happens, Satan just whispers his evil thoughts in our minds, and we accept them. So we are never forced to accept them. It's our choice that we are exercising. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. So look here, don't blame me. Blame yourself for what's happening. مَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخِكُمْ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِيَّ. It's neither I who can come to your help, nor is it you who can come to you. You can't come to my aid. إِنِّي كَفَرْتُ مِمَّا أَشْرَكْتُمُونِي مِنْ قَبْلِ. And I completely dissociate myself from the kind of polytheism, shirk that you are associating with me. Inna zalimina lahum azabun alim. Indeed, the wrongdoers, the unjust, for them there is going to be painful punishment. So that's what the shaitan is going to do on the day of judgment. Then we move to verse 24, which essentially is mentioning the fact that if your belief is true and you understand it and you've accepted it sincerely, something that we have talked about in detail in our pre-Ramadan sessions, then it will have an impact. The Quran says, Alam tara kayfa daraba Allahu mathalan kalimatan tayyibatan. Have you not considered how God presents the example of a good word? The good word is the word of the kalima, the faith, the belief that we have. It says, Asluha thabitun wa faruha fis sama. It's like a good tree whose root is firmly fixed, entrenched in the soil. Wa faruha fis sama. And its branches are high in the sky. The idea is that if you truly believe properly, you're convinced, then not only that you are going to have a good feeling and feeling of contentment, your deeds, your personality is also going to be affected. So it is good all along. You are believing in something which is true, you are convinced about it, and the light that you're going to get as a consequence, the confidence you will get, is going to enable you to do good deeds. That's what a good kalima, a good understanding would do, which is the true faith. Then we move on to verse 34 of Surah Ibrahim, wherein the Almighty mentions, after having counted for us a few of His blessings that He has bestowed upon us in enabling us to live the way we are living. It's amazing that the kind of arrangements that the Almighty has made in order for this life to be possible, we don't normally consider them seriously. But if you look at them, they are numerous. So He says, وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ. He gave you all that you asked of Him. And it's not necessary that we ask by praying to Him. Our needs asked for those supplies, those blessings to be there. And He gave you everything you asked for. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. And if you try to count the blessings of the Almighty, you will not be able to enumerate them, to be able to do justice with the count. Innal insana la zulumun kafar. Indeed, man is unjust, ungrateful. So we are not grateful to our Creator, and we do not perform the way He expects us to perform in this life. Then we move on to verse 37 of the surah, which talks about the mission that Ibrahim alayhi salam was entrusted when he accompanied his son and came to Mecca, and they constructed the house of Allah. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, after having done that, he prayed to the Almighty, Rabbana inni askantu min zurriyati biwadin ghairi zi zar'in inda baytikal muharram. O my Lord, I have settled my progeny, my descendant, in an uncultivated valley, a barren valley, in the Baitikal Muharram, near your sacred house. That's what the purpose is, that my son is going to serve this house. Rabbana li yuqimus salat. Oh my Lord, I've done it so that they should say the prayers regularly. Faj'al af'idatam minan nasi tahwi ilayhim. So please incline people towards this place. Warzuqhum min ath-thamarat, and provide them, feed them with fruits and their needs, provisions. La'allahum yashkurun, so that they are grateful. So what we can imagine is that this house of Allah was constructed by Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, and after it was made, Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed to the Almighty that, I am now leaving my son, my teenaged son here, and I'm going back. This is a barren soil. There are no provisions here. Please make arrangements for them and incline people towards this place, and as a consequence, they'll be able to live a reasonable life. So, this verse tells us that this was the first time they came there. The story that they came when Ibrahim was a toddler, was an infant, doesn't make sense. It goes against a clear mention of the Quran. They came here at the time when Ismail alayhi salam was a teenager, and he helped his father in constructing the house of God. It's so very unfortunate that we sometimes accept a certain understanding as a religiously authentic understanding without even bothering to look at what the Quran is saying. And once there is an understanding that becomes religious and accepted by the society, oh my goodness, you just can't even speak against it, even though you are presenting the Quran to support your understanding. But that's what the truth is. And let's hope this truth also gets across to people and they start believing in it. Then we move on to verse 40 of the surah, wherein we are informed that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he had constructed the house, he prayed to the Almighty a prayer I'm sure we are all aware of. Most of us, when we say our regular prayers, we say this prayer in tashahud. Rabbi jalni muqima salati wa min zurriyati. My Lord, make me regular in my prayer, wa min zurriyati, and my descendants as well. Rabbana wa taqabbal dua. And oh my Lord, accept my prayer, my supplication. Rabbana ghfirli wali walidayya. Oh my Lord, please forgive me and my parents, walil mu'mineen, and believers, yawma yaqumun hisab, the day the account is going to be established. By the way, this prayer was made long after Ibrahim alayhi salam's father, Azar, the polytheist, was destroyed by the Almighty for his crime. And yet this great man is praying for his father. Something very different from the conventional understanding that we have, that we can't pray for the people who are disbelievers. So the Quran is very clear. He was somebody who invited people to polytheism. He used to make idols. He was a worshipper of idols. And yet, Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed for him because he had promised to pray for him. It is another matter that the Almighty eventually stopped him, but he stopped him after years of praying. What I'm saying is, let's read the Quran carefully and let's base our religious understanding on the Quran more than any other source. Then the Almighty informs us in verse 48, يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ. It answers a question. You know, the reading of the Quran is useful in many ways. One of the ways it's very effective is that sometimes you come across questions which are difficult to answer, problematic. One such question was raised, has been raised by many philosophers and intellectuals who are against religion and the understanding that this life has a purpose. So the question is that, I mean, if God is wise, intelligent, and He has created this life for some purpose, there's meaning, I mean, what kind of purpose this life has? I mean, you are living in a very tiny part of this universe. This huge creation around you, all useless, worthless. There's no life there, nothing. So, I mean, it's a very impressive statement, The Quran, in its own style, just responds in a very simple way. The Quran says, يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ. The day this earth is going to be replaced by another earth, وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ, as well as the heavens. In other words, don't worry. This whole existence, space, is actually there as a raw material for the life hereafter to actually be experienced here. The Almighty would need a lot of space to accommodate people in the hell as well as the heaven. Where is it going to come from? It's already there. In other words, the plots have been assigned. The construction is going to take place very soon. So no worries about it. Okay, then finally, the surah ends by saying, Haza balagul linnas. This is a notification from the Almighty. It's a message that needs to be delivered. That is what the Almighty wants from us as well. This message has to be delivered. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to force the message down the throats of others. But it has to be communicated. Balagul linnas, for everyone, the entire humankind. This message is for everyone the Almighty has created. That is humans. وَلِيُنْذَرُوا بِهِ. And also because they get informed about it, and also because they get warned through it. وَلِيَعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا هُوَ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. And so that they should know that there is only one Creator, God the Mighty, and no one else, who is the Creator and who is running the affairs of this world. وَلِيَذَّكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And this message needs to be put across so that people of understanding, they get reminded about the truth. Then we move on to the next surah, which is the partner surah of Surah Ibrahim, which is Surah Al-Hijr. This surah too begins with Alif Lam Ra. As I said, this is one indication of the fact that the two surahs form a pair. Alif Lam Ra, Alif Lam Ra. What does it mean? I can assure you, the more I try to investigate, the more I get convinced that all these letters have meanings. I've already mentioned about the fact that Noon has a meaning, fish. And Surah Noon, Surah Al-Qalam, the 68th surah, has a mention of fish in its texts. So don't have this wrong understanding about the Quran, that the Quran mentions a few things which nobody knows, nobody can know. Everything about the Quran can be known because the Quran tells us, read it with deep reflection, with a view to understanding it. How is it possible that on the one hand, he wants you to understand the Quran, and on the other, he places some verses which have no meanings? This is, this kind of contradiction can be found in humans, not in the Almighty, in the Creator. Alif Lam Ra. This is Surah Alif Lam Ra. Tilka Ayatul Kitab. These are the verses of the book of the Almighty, wa Quran Mubin, which is the Quran a clear Quran. See, the Quran is a clear book. This is what the Quran keeps telling us over and over again. And we keep telling each other that the Quran, no, we can't understand. It's not clear. It's difficult. It's not difficult. It's absolutely clear. How is it possible that the Almighty would send a message for you, for your guidance, and then He couches the message in a language which cannot be understood? Man, you've not put in the proper struggle, effort that the Quran deserves. You know, let's try it, and we'll find that the Quran is actually clear in the guidance that it sets forth to provide us. The next verse is Rubama yawaddul lazina kafaru. Very soon, those who have disbelieved, they will wish, law kanu muslimin, that they were Muslims. They had submitted to the Almighty. That's the message of this verse. But between the first verse and the second verse, there is a tragedy that I'm fond of talking about. Between the first verse of Surah Al-Hijr and the second verse, there is a demarcation of para, sea para. My goodness. You know, it's one of those things that people, they are introduced to something that has got nothing to do with religion. They become accustomed to it, and they get emotionally attached to it, and you can't even talk about it. The Quran has 114 surahs. It has no siparas. The division of the Quran into 30 mechanically, divided parts is something that happened later. And the end result of this division is that people, they read the Quran without understanding it. And why should they not? This surah, the full surah, has been broken into two parts in a way that one verse belongs to the previous separa, and the next entire surah belongs to the next para. What's going on? But honestly, we should always protest politely. I mean, that's for sure. Indecency is not on. But, we must talk against things which are wrong. Try to help people understand. The fact is that if you don't do it and people start accepting what is wrong, it becomes a part of your religion and it becomes a part of culture. So I just wanted to point it out. Okay, let's move on. There's a very important verse in this surah, verse number 9, which I'm sure most of us already know about. Inna nahnu nazzalna zikra wa inna lahu lahafizun. Indeed, we have revealed this remembrance, the Quran, and we are its hafiz, guardians. So the Almighty made a firm vow, promise, that this Quran is not going to be allowed to be altered. It's God's book, and it's going to remain intact, fully preserved. The people of the book have a right to ask this question: why this stepfatherly, stepmotherly attitude towards the other books? The answer is, you see, all questions are good questions. We should not be upset at questions because they help us in understanding the plan of the Almighty more clearly. The only reason we react negatively is that we don't have the answers. So, what else should we do? But I think the right approach should be that we say to somebody who's asked a good question that it's a good question. I don't know the answer, but I'll think about it. In the case of the earlier books, because in God's plan, there were more prophets to come. Therefore, if there were some people who altered some part of the text, no real serious damage done, because the later prophets would correct what was taken away, like Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ did. But imagine, the Almighty has decided that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who has brought the Quran is the last prophet. No further prophets are going to come. Imagine that the Quran too was allowed to be altered. There would be no way a seeker after truth would have ever be able to see what the truth is. So the Quran had to be fully preserved. So that's a very important verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hijr. The Almighty mentions in verse 21, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِندَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ, and there is nothing but in this world that we have its reservoirs with us in abundance. However, وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدْرٍ مَعْلُومٍ, we send down according to a known measure. You see, as I said earlier, what's mentioned in Surah Ibrahim, we humans, in order for us to survive, we need so many different elements of nature to come together to enable us to sustain our life and to flourish. And lo and behold, all that we need is available. And the Almighty is saying here that it's available in abundance. The only thing is that He provides humans in a way which is measured. Not everything is sent, all in completely in one go. Then we move on to verse 33 of Surah Al-Hijr, wherein the Almighty informs us about the story that has been mentioned in the Quran 7 times, the story of Adam and Iblis. The Almighty asked Iblis, Satan, to prostrate before Adam, and he refused. Why? قَالَ لَمْ أَكُنْ لِأَسْجُدَ لِبَشَرٍ خَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ. I'm not going to prostrate to a human whom you created out of clay from an altered black mud. The starting point of human creation was actually this smelly, altered black mud. There was an evolution. I'll talk about it when we'll reach Surah Sajda. So Satan mentioned about it, and he said that, elsewhere it's mentioned that you created me out of fire, and you created him from this mud. Why should I bow down before him? So, in other words, he was arrogant, and this arrogance of him led him to not accept the truth that was revealed by the Almighty, and was the expectation from him to bow down before Adam. We move on to verse 49 of this surah, where we find that the Almighty is mentioning, Nabbi ibadi anni anal ghafurur rahim. O Prophet, tell my servants that I am forgiving, merciful. Wa anna azabi huwa al-azabul alim, and that my punishment is a painful punishment. So, one has to look at the Almighty and understand Him in totality. There has to be a balanced approach. Indeed, He is forgiving, merciful. His mercy is one attribute that dominates over all others. However, it doesn't really mean that He allows people to go on doing criminal acts, going against His expectations with impunity, and He would do nothing. No, He is the one who, when He comes to punishing, His punishment is also severe. And then goes on to say, وَنَبِّئْهُمْ عَنْ ضَيْفِ Ibrahim, and inform them about the guests of Abraham. Ibrahim's guests were the angels, who came with two different missions. The one mission was a mission of mercy, to inform Ibrahim and his wife Sarah that they're going to get a child, even though they were very old. But on the other hand, the same angels had come with the mission to destroy the nation of Lut alayhi salam, Lot. So the angels were a manifestation of both aspects of the Almighty's attributes, His mercy as well as His preparedness to punish people when they go wrong. In verse 85, the Almighty says that this creation is a purposeful creation. وَمَا خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. We have not created the heavens and the earth and whatever is between them except for a purpose. وَإِنَّ السَّاعَةَ لَآتِيَةٌ. And indeed, the time, the day of judgment is going to come very soon. فَاصْفَحِ الصَّفْحَ الْجَمِيلَ. So, O Prophet, just ignore and forgive them graciously. You know, don't be bothered by what they're saying. This life has a purpose. It's going to come to an end. There's going to be a day of accountability. If these people are not willing to realize it, it's their fault. Try to help them understand, but if they are not in a mood to understand, ignore them. Do not allow yourself to be bothered by their negative attitude. Verse 87 then goes on to comfort the Prophet ﷺ and his followers by telling them that, look here, it's true that we have provided these disbelievers with a lot of, worldly success, wealth, and possessions, and they are deeply engrossed, obsessed with it. But look at what the Almighty has given you, and value it and rejoice. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِي وَالْقُرْآنَ الْعَظِيمِ. We have instead given you 7 groups that have pairs in them, that is this great Quran. This is one indication from the Almighty that the Quran that we have today with us has 7 surah groups, as I've been explaining those groups, and each group has several surah pairs. So that's what this verse mentions, although obviously it has been understood differently as well. But this seems to be the most plausible explanation. The Quran is a great gift of the Almighty. It's a book of wisdom, it's a book of guidance, and the way it has been designed, it attracts all good humans, intelligent humans, if they properly understand what the Quran is saying and the way it's saying, the way the Quran is expressing itself. Finally, verse 99 is mentioning to the Prophet that, look here, keep doing your job, keep telling them what the truth is, and keep worshipping the Almighty. وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Keep worshipping your Lord until there comes to you the certainty of the reality that the message that you have brought about is going to ultimately succeed, and the certainty that you will get when you will meet your Lord, and your success, the real success of the next life would begin. Then we have Surah Nahl and Surah Bani Israel, the 2 surah pairs that are beginning, from now on. Surah Nahl is Surah number 16, and Surah Bani Israel, Surah number 17. Both form a pair. There are several aspects of these 2 surahs that incline you to believe that they are indeed forming a pair. They have 3 prominent topics that are common to both. A, the topic regarding the migration of the Prophet and the companions. It's talked about in both surahs. The subject of the principles of morality that are mentioned in both surahs. In Surah Nahl in brief, in Surah Bani Israel in detail. And the topic that the Jews, even when the Muslims were in Mecca, they had started playing a negative role. So they have been talked about in both surahs. So as I said, when 2 surahs come together and they are partnering each other, there are many features that will lead you to believe that that's what the truth is. And you know what? You do have this question in mind. Why did not the Almighty announce it himself? I can tell you that God has this approach of not informing you about everything clearly, openly, so that some of the treasures that He has designed to be there hidden for you to discover, when you discover them, you really feel great about it. You have a sense of achievement. You have the confidence that there is much more in store for you to discover. So that's the style, the arrangement of the Almighty. Some of the aspects of the Quran and its brilliance, they are mentioned. Some others, I have a feeling many others, most others, are hidden for the uh, researcher, the one looking for the truth to discover. So, Surah An-Nahl is the one that I can start right now. Uh, the fact of the matter is that the Almighty has mentioned about His blessings in the Quran over and over again. And He's mentioned them in a way that, you read those blessings, you do feel that indeed God is kind. He is the one who has enabled us to live this life comfortably. But I can tell you, I mean, it's my understanding, I can be wrong. You can have another understanding, different understanding. The kind of mention of the Almighty's blessings that you find in Surah An-Nahl, I've not found them elsewhere. It's the most eloquent in describing the blessings of the Almighty. So we begin with this surah, Surah An-Nahl, which is the 16th surah of the Quran. And it says, Ata amrullahi fala tastajilu. The decision of the Almighty has arrived. It's just round the corner. So don't be in a haste about it. That is, patiently wait for it. You see, the trouble is with humans that they know that the sun that they can see bright blazing above their head in a matter of hours is going to set. But they don't look forward to it. They don't want to think about it. I mean, it's given that it's going to go, it's going to disappear. Likewise, the hour is going to come, but the blazing life, the glorious, the attractive life is just, kind of make people so deeply engrossed in it that they forget about it. So it's going to come. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is free from all weaknesses and is exalted. Amma yushrikun, from what they are associating with him. That's how the surah begins. And then what we find is that in verse 9, the Almighty is mentioning that وَعَلَى اللَّهِ قَصْدُ السَّبِيلِ, and it is upon God that the right way leads to. It's towards God that qasdu sabil, the right path, leads you to. What it means is that if you know in your conscience and you are using your intellect properly and you think that you are moving on the right track, you're bound to find God. He assures you. So remain intellectually honest and morally upright and be sure that you will find God. He's going to come to tell you that you're okay, you're successful. However, وَمِنْهَا جَائِرٌ, there are paths that are deviating. There are distractions. So you are treading the right path, but there are attractions that are threatening to take you away. So be careful. وَلَوْ شَاءَ, had He willed, had Allah willed, لَهَدَاكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, He would have guided you all. But that is what He did not will. Why? He says, I did not. Well, why? Because obviously, had He decided to guide everyone, then He should have decided another thing. Accompanying decision should have been taken, that He would have taken away from all of us our freedom, our ability to think independently. But He didn't want that to happen, because that would have taken away the purpose. The purpose is for each human to go through the trial of this life and to prove to the Almighty that he or she is eligible for the paradise. How could it have been done without freedom, without free will? So, had God wanted, He could have guided everybody. But that would have been purposeless. It would have been a forced guidance, which really is besides the point. So that's what the Quran keeps saying, that that's not what the Almighty wants. Then in verse 18, we find the Almighty is talking about His blessings. As I said earlier, they are mentioned in this surah more than any other surah, and says the same thing that we have read before. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. And if you count the favors of the Almighty, you can't do justice with it. You can't enumerate them. Inna Allaha la ghafurur rahim. Indeed, God is forgiving, merciful. The reason why he's saying it is, he's forgiving and merciful. He's giving you blessings after blessings despite your performance. You're ungrateful, you are not doing morally well, and yet he continues to be kind to you. So that's what he keeps saying. And then finally, the last verse that we'll do for today is verse 43 of this surah, wherein the Almighty is mentioning that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ. O Prophet, you are not the first one to come to guide people. We've sent before you many men, we gave wahi to them. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So you ask the people of the message, the people of the book, if you don't know yourself. That is, don't be surprised that I'm delivering this message of the Almighty to you. This is not the first time that it's happening. There were many messengers who came before me. I am one from amongst them. The only thing is that I'm the last one in the series. If you don't know people of Makkah, ask the people of the book, ask the Jews, ask the Christians. They will tell you that there have been many prophets who have come before you, because this was another propaganda that people of Mecca used to raise, that why should we believe in a person to be God's messenger? Why should a human be a messenger? So they have been informed that, look, this is nothing new. It really has been a series, and I am a part of that series. Okay, inshallah, we will continue with this understanding of the Quran, which summarized version, tomorrow and onwards. And the next, this surah towards the end, and the next surahs we'll do. May the Almighty enable us to understand the Quran properly and to get guided from it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll have a session after 20 minutes. So I'll start the meeting again 20